Welcome, Jess. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be talking all about copywriting and why you should be using storytelling in your emails. So, I just wanted to get started for anyone who's not familiar with you and your work. How did you get started as a copywriter, and why do you specifically work with holistic entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so great question. So I was actually a teacher for 9 years. And like many teachers during the whole, pandemic that we don't like to talk about anymore, I just wasn't really feeling fulfilled. I was already feeling like that a little bit beforehand, but it just kind of really just was a huge weight on my shoulders. And I'm like, this isn't working. While teaching and while dealing with all of that, I actually decided to enroll in yoga teacher training. I promise this is relevant. So I promised. No, I had started practicing yoga in 2008. And then in 2015 is when I dedicated myself to a daily practice. Still going strong, almost 10 years daily practice, right? So in 2020, I was like, all right, let's just take this a step further. Let's enroll in teacher training. Why not, right? And like many of you listening probably have experienced, when you're in yoga teacher training, you're not just learning about yoga, you're learning about yourself. And there's lots of reflection and there's lots of like introspection and lots of wondering about, the way that you're living and what you want to do, like all these things that you're not expecting. So I knew I needed to make some changes, and so I decided to make all of the big changes all at once, one of which was a career change. And so kind of took a step back, looked at what I was good at because I'm like, I already had gone to college. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree. Like, I don't want to go to school again, but like, what am I good at? What can I kind of tap into here? And I started doing copywriting. And so I was working on evenings and weekends and just like no social life for a while. But from that, I was able to say goodbye to the teaching world and jump into freelancing full time. And so once I kind of got my feet wet with that and figured out how that whole world works, because it is very different than teaching, then I started to really be intentional about who it was that I was working with. Because like as a copywriter, like I help brands and businesses and companies basically sell stuff, right? And power in my words. And if I wanted to, I could work with anybody who needs to sell stuff, even if they're like evil and they have like a bad mission that I don't believe in. I could be like, sure, I'll help you sell that, but like I don't want to do that. So that's why I have, made it kind of my own little mission to work with people who are more like-minded, who I feel good about working with, who feel aligned in like the things that we're doing, like both of us are doing. And then it becomes more fulfilling also when you have this like partnership going on where it's like they're doing something good, I'm doing something good, and we can kind of help each other like through the things that we do. So yeah, it felt good to just focus on people who are doing good and focus on wellness and yoga and all that good stuff that I also believe in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm the same for who I work with as well for pretty much the same reasons. The ripple effect that you can have throughout society is so much more when you're really supporting each businesses that are trying to, the goal is to help people really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like the nice thing about having your own business and like doing your own thing is like you get to choose who it is that you want to help and who it is that you want to serve.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So let's dive into email writing. Why is it important to use storytelling as the foundation for your emails, and sort of what would that look like in email writing?
Yeah. So I mean there's so much that we're gonna dig into today. I just know it. So like first of all, I mean we all get emails, right? Like go into your inbox right now and I'm sure that there's somebody in there that when they pop up, you're like, oh yeah, I can't wait to read that email. And in many cases, I'm gonna make an assumption here, but in many cases, it's probably more than just an email that's like, hey, I made this video for you, go watch it. It's like, that's boring. Nobody wants to read that. But it's likely got some sort of story. It's likely got some sort of peek into their own life or something that they've experienced or whatever happened that made them want to, share with you or make something to give to you, right? So that, I mean, first of all, it's create something more exciting to read. But one of my favorite reasons, like this is what I'll die on a hill for, but like one of my favorite reasons to use storytelling is that they really allow us to differentiate ourselves from, I want to say competitors, but I don't use competitors like in a like I'm gonna beat you kind of way. So, think about like as yoga teachers. 'Cause I mean, I'm also a yoga teacher. So we all as yoga teachers, like there's a lot of us out here, right? We are not the only ones who do what we do. And so it becomes a matter of finding your people and attracting your people. Because I mean, really, we have to have this like abundance mindset. Like it's not like, oh, I need this audience and you can't have them. It's like we all have people out there who are going to look at what we do and be like, ooh, that's my person. And storytelling is going to be what does that for you because even though we're all doing the same thing, give or take, it's the stories that are going to set us apart. And, we can be teaching similar things. We can be, guiding our students through similar like yoga sequences and classes, but like the lived experiences that we've had as people, that's ours. Like nobody can take that from us. And that's going to be the thing that sets you apart from others. Right. So when you start to use those things in your emails, it helps you stand out. It kind of helps you make a name for yourself. And also it helps you create stronger connections with people, right? They start to get to know you. They start to see you as like, that's my friend Jess in my inbox over there. Like, I can't wait to hear from her. And it starts to kind of create more of like a humanness to it. Even though it's an email going out to everybody on your list, it still feels like it's an email just to you, So it's so fun too because you get to really dig into like more fun stuff and not just like, hey, go read my blog post. And they're like, why?
What type of stories would you tell in your emails? Like, where are you getting these ideas?
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So we as yoga teachers, we have this made kind of easy for ourselves. And I say that because we have literally thousands and thousands and thousands of years of wisdom and knowledge and teachings that we can pull from in our stories, right? Not every service provider, not every business owner has that. So there's that, right? So we can pull from things like the sutras, like the yamas and the niyamas. We can pull from like different stories. Like think about like some of the asanas they're named after specific people, gods, goddesses, whatever. There's stories behind that. So I mean we can share that. We can share yoga teachings and philosophy that we've learned ourselves. I mean, we've all had our own experiences with yoga. We maybe could share stories about our students and their experiences with yoga. So like all of that is very yoga specific, right? So me, for example, there's also like a ton of other places that I've pulled inspiration for my own emails. So like here's just a couple examples. So I've written about some inspiring ideas or quotes that I've heard from a podcast episode. I've written about random thoughts or like realizations that I've had on my walks. I've talked about like common topics in the area that I'm talking about and like my own experiences with it, why I agree or disagree with it. I've written emails about song lyrics and the emotions that I experienced because of it. I've written about my struggles and what I've learned from them. I've written about my successes and how I got to them. So it's fun because like there's this idea that oh, my life is boring or I don't have any like nothing exciting happens to me. Like I just go to the store and I buy groceries and then I take my dog for a walk and then like, oh, the bird was chirping the other day. Like nobody wants to hear that, but like
But they really say that. Yeah.
yeah, but like those are the stories that people do want to hear because they're relatable. Like nobody wants to open up an email and read this like grandiose story about how you experienced something and you've never had a struggle and everything worked out perfectly. And then all of a sudden, you reached your goal and like it was the easiest thing in the world. Like people cannot relate to that. People are gonna read that and be like, yeah, okay, cool, like good for you. Like I got nothing out of that. But like it's those everyday stories that really pull people in and like they allow them to connect with us. They allow them to relate, to be like, oh, like this person literally understands my life because like they're experiencing it too.
But how do you change, like, say that's your routine? You go to the supermarket, you walk your dog, all of that. How do you make that interesting with a story? Like, I understand the relatable part, but that can't be your email every week you're sending to you.
Right. I mean, well, I'm going to argue that there's more things that happen to you. Like, if you were listening to this podcast right now, like you might have some sort of idea that's sparked and you're like, wow, like Jess really said something that kind of like lit a fire under my booty and now I'm feeling motivated to like do XYZ. Like that can be the inspiration for your writing, or it could be the inspiration for you to do something, and then whatever it is that you do becomes something that you write about. So like I would challenge you to, think about the things that you're doing in your day-to-day life. And is it really just going to the grocery store? Is it here? Okay, I'm really bad at coming up with examples on the spot, but I'm going to try here. So let's say you're driving to the grocery store and you get cut off by a person, like when you're driving, right? And you woke up on the wrong side of the day, or wrong side of the bed. You've had a grumpy day. You didn't have your coffee and you're just in a bad mood. So when this person cuts you off, you throw out your horn, you give them the middle finger, you're swearing at them, right? Okay. So like that is an everyday thing that people experience. People like see people doing that, right? Like, why is that exciting? And then you go back and you're like, oh, wait a minute. I talk about how I practice yoga. And yoga is not just doing the poses on the mat, right? Yoga is living the yamas and the niyamas. It's showing compassion and it's being kind to myself and to others, right? It's non-harming. It's all these different things that we're taught. So you can literally connect a story about how you freaked out on somebody because you had a moment, right? But then it's like it gives you that opportunity to be like, hey, to your readers, like, hey, like I stopped and I was like, oh, and that moment of mindfulness brought you back to your practice and you're like, now I can do better. That's how it's honestly, it's not necessarily a thing that happens. It's the deeper emotions and the feelings and like it's that deeper stuff. That's what you pull out to connect it to your story or to connect it to like your email. It's not literally about the drive to the grocery store. It's about what happened in those deeper emotions that were felt and how whatever it is that you're writing about can connect to that moment.
So I guess one of the keys with your storytelling is to make sure that you are including some kind of emotional element within your write-up that you can see. Yeah.
I mean, whether or not it's something that we have like actively in our mind, like, oh, I need to think about the emotion. I think it does kind of just happen naturally because like you think about, any story that's interesting, it's like there's some sort of conflict. Whether or not we want there to be conflict, we're like humans are drawn to this like conflict, like, ooh, there's a problem, like we want to see the problem, we want to see what happened from the problem. So like naturally, I think it just lends itself to having that emotion kind of packed in there,
So we've got this story that we've come up with from our daily life or from the sutras or from whatever the quotes you mentioned as well, any sort of inspiration. How do you then like link them and connect that to whatever call to action it is that you are having in your email, whether it's like buying something or trying to watch this video or whatever it might be? How do you find that link and make it seem natural?
Yeah, I was gonna say that is the trickiest part. Sometimes, like, like I write emails for a living right now. I literally write emails every day for myself, for my clients, and there are still days where it's like I go to write something and I'm like, I need to walk away. Like, it's not happening right now. So, like, it happens to me too. If it happens to you, like, no judgment. It's going to happen. But so there's a couple things that I'll kind of go through to help me figure that out. Like I don't just sit there and like, boom, it's here. So like the first thing is kind of like the obvious, like what is the literal thing that you want them to click to? So like, what is the CTA? So CTA, call to action. It's the goal, right? And what do you want them to do? So are they literally clicking to get some sort of new like free content? Are they going to your YouTube video? Are they going to your new blog post? Are they going to your new podcast episode? Do you teach locally and you have a free community class that you're teaching? So maybe there's some sort of free content that you want them to click to. Maybe you have like a paid membership. Is it an invitation to join this paid membership? Is this an email to people who are already members and you want to show them that there's a new video within their paid membership? Is it an invitation to buy a program or a course or a workshop or a retreat? So it's like we have all these options of, what it could be. Maybe it's maybe you're looking for one-on-one clients, one-on-one students. Maybe your email is about, the power of working one-on-one with a teacher. Maybe that's your CTA. Maybe you don't even have like an actual link. Maybe it's just like reply and let me know if you're interested. Like that's still a CTA. So you have to think about like the obvious, right? What are they literally, what do I want them to do? Then I like to think about what's going to happen when they click. And I don't mean literal anymore. Not like, well, if they click on this button, they're going to go to my sales page for my new course. Or if they click on this button, they're going to land on my YouTube video. Here's where I'm kind of getting back to that, like, how do I connect it with that emotion thing? So it's more of like, so what's going to happen when they click? What are they going to get out of it? Humans are selfish. We want to know what's in it for us, right? So like, what are they going to get out of it? How is this going to benefit them? Right? Like, how is it going to make their life better? How is it going to transform their life? So what kind of value does this thing that I'm trying to make them click on, what kind of value does this thing give them? Right? So that's kind of the next step. And it might take a little bit to kind of figure that out at first. Cause I mean, we don't always think about like, those kind of like deeper benefits. But then, so we start to uncover like, the value behind it, the things they're going to get out of it, the way that it's going to make their lives better. And then we can also kind of start to think about what problems they might have. So I say problems or pain points, it's marketing stuff. We say pain points, but like they're not actually in pain, or well, maybe they're not actually in pain. Well, maybe, but it's more of like a desire or a struggle or something it is that they want that your thing helps them with. So like, if you're, let's say, here I go with my, on the spot examples, but like, let's say you have a blog post that really breaks down the different like sun salutations, and this is why I don't ever do things on the spot. I'm like, what am I going to say? But like, let's say, there's people who are like, well, how do I know if this is a sun salutation A or sun salutation B? How do I know if I'm stepping back? Like, wait, is this a half sun salutation? Am I even stepping back? So it's like, maybe it, the whole point is to like break down the confusion and help people feel more confident. So when their teacher says, we're going to do a sun salutation A, they're like, I know what we're going to do. So it helps them, it helps prepare them. It helps them feel more confident, helps take away those jitters of like stepping into a class being like, oh, they're going to say sun salutation something. And I'm going to be like, oh, which one was that? So it's like kind of digging again into the feelings and the emotions and using those to link to what it is that they're going to do, and then how that thing helps them with that problem, right? And if you're watching me right now, my hands are all, I'm like, the thing goes over here, you get the problems over here. So it's like, it's really, it's finding the problem, finding the benefit and how that is going to help them, and then showing them how, like, when they click on, whatever it is, it's going to help them get value and benefit their life so that they can then get rid of that problem.
So, yeah, it makes sense. So I'm just thinking back to the car ragey example that we started, and then how we would link that to the sun salutation blog. So then you've connected that as like maybe some emotions of like frustration, and then you came back to your practice and you found that like calm and confidence, and then that is what they're going to find in this blog post as well if they've ever felt frustrated when they're not sure which sequence, is that sort of thing. I got that right.
I mean, ultimately, yes. I mean, it would probably be more refined and like put together than just us, kind of coming up with the spot. But yeah, here. Okay. So I actually have another example.
Okay.
So, which I actually, well, and this way, this is good because I actually like legit thought about this morning. Like the morning that we're recording this, I thought about this in the shower. It's where I do my best work, you guys. Like I was in there and I was like, this is gold. Like I have to make sure I remember this. I came out and wrote it down. So like, here we go. So I want to give you this example to kind of show you the difference too. So it's going to go into what we were just talking about with like the connection of one thing to another, but it's also going to show the difference of like an email with storytelling and an email without, right? So let me set the stage here. So let's say that you have a new YouTube video coming out. Let's say that you post classes on there, like, consistently, whatever. And let's say that you have created a class, a yoga, like a flow that helps people really embody compassion. Going back to that compassion idea, but I actually have a legit idea this time. So going back to that idea of compassion, that karuna, like going into it, what it means, like all that kind of stuff. So that's the foundation here. We want to write an email to send people to our new video that is a yoga flow about compassion, right? So email example number 1. Somebody opens it up and it might just say like, hey, today I want to talk to you about compassion. Why should we be compassionate? Because, the teachings, like the yoga teachings tell us to. You might have heard Karun. Like, you could go into like, this is like very factual, right? And then like, oh, by the way, I have a video. It's the topic of this week's video. Go watch it. So you're like, cool. I mean, is it a bad email? I mean, no, it's not bad. It tells you what to expect. It tells you what it's about, and you have something to click on. What? Let's go to email number 2 here. So, I thought that's what out this morning. Like, I'm serious. So, let's say you start this email out, and this is a long one. So I'll let you know when it's ending, because you're gonna be like, is she still talking, or is she about to stop? You open up the email. It says, hey, so I've been struggling a little bit with my yoga practice lately. No, not the asana, not the pranayama, not that stuff that people can see on my mat, but it's the stuff that you don't see. It's that internal stuff that we as yoga teachers work to teach and instill in our own students. And just the other day, I had this moment where I was really struggling, and I was making this week's video for you, and I was stumbling over my words. Left and right were the same thing that day. I couldn't get them separate. Like they were all over the place. And, my editing was taking forever. The sound was messed up. The camera fell over. Like things just were not going well at all. And I found myself wondering, like, why am I even doing this? Like, am I even good enough to be doing this? Like, who wants to watch this class when I can't even figure out how to record this the right way? And then I stopped and I was like, wait. And I looked back at the video that I was editing for you today. And the video was literally about compassion, about karuna, and about why we should be not only compassionate with others, but compassionate with ourselves. And I looked at that video and I said, man, I'm literally doing exactly what, or the opposite of what this video is trying to instill today. And so maybe with this week's video, perhaps it's a reminder that we all need from time to time, myself included. And maybe I'll go back to this video and watch it right alongside you. So if you're ready to embrace some compassion with me today, let's watch this video together. And then you link the video, and that's the end of the email. Do you feel the difference in that?
Yeah. It takes you on a journey.
It does. And so you'll get this idea of like, people are like, well, do people even want to read a long email? Like, sure, that would have been longer, right? But like, you're literally taking them through this journey with you. You started off like that line at the beginning. Please tell me that you did not want to know more. When I said that I've been struggling with my yoga practice, like if I'm a yoga teacher and I'm putting videos out and people are expecting, new content from me, to have me tell them that I'm struggling, they're going to be like, wait, why? Why is she struggling? Like, I want to know more. That's called a hook. You want a good hook because you want to keep them reading, right?
Yeah.
So, you hook them in. I kind of gave a little background, a little context. I gave that conflict, that problem I was having, and then I turned it into, that's the video for this week. And that's literally, it's something I'm experiencing. So it's like, there's kind of this kind of leads into like another point I wanted to make too, but like, there's also this question of like, well, how much is like, I don't want to share my life story. I don't want to share all these things that are deep down inside. Like, you don't have to share things that you're not comfortable sharing, right? Like, that was a little moment of vulnerability. That was not true, by the way. That was completely made up. I don't put yoga videos on YouTube. Like, I'm an in-person and like Zoom kind of girl. Like, I don't have stuff on YouTube, but like, it allows like that little bit of vulnerability in me just putting those emotions out there. That can be absolutely scary. I totally get that. But like your people are going to read that and they're going to connect so much to that because they can see themselves in that story, right? And so when you can do that, like you're building up trust and you're building up like there's this term in marketing, know, like, and trust. You know, people only buy from people they know, they like, and they trust. So it's like you're building those things up through these relatable stories. You're inspiring people take that action because like you yourself have experienced this like right alongside them, you know? So it's like the stories can be so powerful.
Mm. Do you have any other advice for anyone that's maybe struggling to include that vulnerability into their actual writing skills?
Yeah, so that's a good point because I mean, there can be sometimes like a fine line of like what is, and I say what's okay. Like, I mean, really, like, who are we to decide what's okay for one person over the next? But it's like the one thing that I will think about is like if I'm about to share something that I'm kind of like, "Oh, do I want to share this?" I like to ask myself, why does it feel uncomfortable to me? Right. So if it feels uncomfortable because I'm scared about like perfectionism or like imposter syndrome or I'm worried about people like what people are gonna think, it's because I'm like being vulnerable makes me nervous. If it's anything along those lines, but I know that this moment can really help somebody, or I know that it can kind of help make that connection, I would challenge you to face that discomfort and share it. Maybe not all of it, but a little. But if you're feeling uncomfortable because it's a very intimate moment or a private or a personal moment, maybe it involves somebody and you're like, I'm pretty sure they don't want me to share this story. Then in those cases, I would say trust your gut and just keep that one to yourself, you know?
Mm. Yeah.
Just do a little gut check there.
Yeah. I'd also add on that you will get unsubscribes
Yeah.
probably every time you
Yeah.
send something, and don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally, but also I would say thank them, which is a very, very weird thing for somebody to say because you're like, hold on, I thought I wanted them.
Yeah.
Yes and no. You want people on your email list, but you also want people on your list that are aligned with what you're doing and, you know, the things that you're putting out there. Because if you have that, going back to the whole like, why is storytelling good? It helps you create this idea of a healthy email list. The more you share your stories, the more you're going to push away people that might not feel connected with that. But the more you're going to attract and bring in those people that do feel connected and do feel aligned. So that when you are, you know, when it's time to share that YouTube video or that podcast episode or that membership, you know, doors are opening to your membership or you have a retreat or, you know, your course is launched, whatever it is that you're doing, your list is a group of people that are 100% into what you're doing. So when it comes time to open the doors or launch the course or do whatever, or click on the blog, whatever, those people are going to be more inclined to do that. Right. And if you have people on there that are like, oh, I liked one thing you said once, but then you started talking about your stories and I don't really like you anymore, but I'm still here. They're just taking up space. Right. They're not your people. They're somebody else.
Yeah.
And then there's more people out there that are your people. Like there's a lot of people out here, you guys. Like there's plenty for all of us.
And just remember that when you're starting out, you can usually set up your email list for free, and then it's not so worried. And then you're really trying to like get people, and that's like, oh, a new subscriber, and an unsubscribe can be like, no. But once you start to get bigger, that costs money to have them on your list, and it's a privilege to be on your list. So you need to think of it like that, especially as you're sharing vulnerable things, like you've said. It's a privilege for people to read that sort of stuff and connect with you in that way. Definitely.
Yeah.
Sort of take that mindset, I think, around while you're building your list. Like you said, it's better if you've got 50 people on your list, but they all are like really keen on whatever you're doing, than you've got 1,000 people on your list that only 50 of them are really keen on what you're doing. So you're still paying for that 950 people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how long do these emails need to be? How much time should this take?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm gonna give you the answer that like nobody likes, but it depends. No, but really. So I would say like this is gonna be one of those things where there's no rule. There's not like a rule that says like, okay, a good email is gonna be 10 lines long and 150 words, let's say. Like some of my emails are like, I have like 800-word emails. And yes, people read all the way to the bottom because they're like answering things that I put at the bottom or like in the middle. And some of my emails are 450, 500. I don't think I've written a shorter email though, because it's just not my thing. But I would say, you kind of have to look at like the whole point of your email here. So you have to give enough of the background info or the context of your story so that whatever happens down the line makes sense, right? So, because I mean, I've read emails where it's like they jump from one thing to the next, and I'm like, how do those things connect? Like it's like they left out like a whole chunk of the story that was needed for the whole thing to make sense when it came time to like click on that CTA or like, take that action. So it's like you need to make sure that you've got all those kind of gaps filled in, right? So like the whole story makes sense. You'll hear people say like, don't put any fluff in there. I'd like to say that little bits of fluff here and there are okay because they add to your personal voice. They add to like, like you're not going to go off on a tangent and like write 20 more sentences about a camping trip you took that has nothing to do with the actual story, but like a little like in parentheses, like you can add little lines of like, you say something and then in parentheses you're like, I know that felt cool, right? Like you can add those little things as if you were like kind of nudging or like talking to your friend. But it's kind of just a balance that you have to play with. Like write out the story. If you need to step away, shut your computer or whatever, come back to it, go back and see if it makes sense. See if some parts you're like, that's kind of redundant. That part doesn't make sense because I actually forgot a whole line there. Like, it might take you stepping back and going back to it later with fresh eyes to kind of give it a little look again. And I mean, as far as like how much time it takes, if you're new to the whole storytelling thing, I mean, it's probably gonna take a couple hours at first just because it's something new. And with anything new, like it takes time to learn and get comfortable and like kind of, get the flow of everything that you need to do. And it doesn't need to be done all at the same time. Like I would say, write down the main idea, like write down, okay, the story, the feeling, the CTA, and just like get that down and walk away. And then come back and be like, all right, get those general ideas, like what do I want to say about the story? How do I want to connect it? Like get those main ideas down, walk away and then come back and kind of like flesh it out and add those details and kind of refine it. It doesn't need to be done in one sitting. And even like now, like again, I've been writing emails for years and there are times when I will do that same thing. Like I don't always write an email in one sitting. Sometimes it comes and sometimes you're just like, this is not happening right now. And it's like, instead of stressing about it, just come back to it. The world's not going to end if you don't finish your email right now.
Do you start with the CTA and work backwards, or can you have these stories and then be like, oh, that one fits with that, and you come to it later?
That's a great question. I've done both. I guess it depends on, the point of the email, because there's been times where I know that I have something I want to push out. And so then I'm like, okay, what do I want to, because I'm kind of in like a low period right now. I'm not promoting anything. I'm really just promoting like, I have like email audits and, just like one-on-one clients. So like, I don't have a course. I'm not promoting anything. So for me, it's like, if I have a blog post that I want to push to, or if I have like, working one-on-one that I want to push to, that might be my CTA that I have in mind. And then I'm like, okay, what's something that people can get out of if they read this blog post? Or, what's something that they would benefit from if they had me write for them? Then I can think about the story like I talked about before. But then there's times when I'm like, oh my gosh, like the story just happened, or like this thing just happened to me. I have to tell these people about it. I don't know what I'm going to connect this to yet. I don't know where this is going, but I have to tell this because like, I need to share this with somebody. And there's times when I'll do that too. And you kind of go into it the same way, right? You would start with a story and kind of break it down. You would think about, okay, what did I experience from this? What were the emotions? What happened that made me feel that way? Where was I? Kind of like breaking it all down. And then seeing if you can come up with like a similar emotion and like something that you do or something that you have and how those two connect, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And you have any other practical tips for anyone that would like to get started storytelling?
Yeah, well, the story bank is my absolute number one tip. So,
Yeah.
let's talk about this idea of a story bank. So, the idea of like sitting down and staring at a blank page can be absolutely debilitating, right? You're staring there, or you're staring at the page, the cursor is just blinking at you, and you're like, time is ticking. I don't know what to write. I'm looking outside and I just want to go outside, but I have to write this email. But you don't have to, you get to. But that's another story. So I would say absolutely start a story bank. And so this is going to be a little homework or a little challenge. So story bank is basically just going to be a collection of ideas, right? No expectations, no filters, no judgment, just get it in there. And the nice thing about a story bank is you're writing these ideas down as they come instead of kind of forcing yourself to come up with an idea when you quote unquote need to have this idea. So I carry my phone with me. Like even when I'm on my walks, I go on walks all the time. I'm not on my phone, but I have it on me for this reason. So I have just on the notes app, I have a running doc and just filled with stuff. And it's an ongoing idea bank, a story bank. So you gotta have to create this like little habit of just being a little more observant and a little more aware, which I would argue that we as yoga teachers maybe are a little more attuned to this than some other people. And if not, here is your invitation to try it. So it's, when you take those walks, what happened? What were you feeling? Tap into this like idea of mindfulness. Like what senses were you experiencing? What was going on around you? Did something happen out in the distance and you kind of tuned into it? Did something happen to you? Even in this normal everyday walk that you take, did you see something different? Did you feel something different? On special moments, maybe you went to a class that you never go to. Maybe you checked out a new hiking trail. Maybe you went to a new grocery store, whatever. Literally all these like very uneventful things. Just start to kind of pay attention to them, right? See what comes up. Pay more attention when you're listening to podcasts, even though I know we're all multitasking when we listen to them, but like if something catches your attention, just take a screenshot so you have that timestamp of like, that's the podcast at 8 minutes and 33 seconds. She said something that was so good and I need to come back to that. Then you know to come back to it. So in your story bank, don't just write down the idea. Because if you're like, I need to write about the bluebird that I saw. If you just like go back to your story bank 3 weeks later, you see bluebird, you're gonna be like, why did I write down bluebird in my story bank? I have no idea why that's there. So write down what it was, right? But also the idea behind it. So what happened that made you want to write about it? How did you feel in that moment? Right? What was that connection? What was the key takeaway that you wanted to share with somebody when you saw that? Was it the moment that you freaked out in the car? Was it the feeling of not being compassionate to yourself when you're literally creating a yoga flow that focuses on compassion? Like, what was it? What was that key takeaway that you want to share with people? That way, when you go back to the story bank, you not only have that little random thing, but you also have all this like supporting information that kind of gives it context so that you're not just like left in the dark later and you're like, I don't know why I wrote that, but I'm sure it was a great idea. So, like I said, I keep mine in my notes app. I'll also, when I'm on my walks, like if I can't text and type, like I will fall. There's rocks and roots all over on these trails. So I'll just do a voice memo and I'll literally just talk to myself for a second on the trail and be like, okay, I just saw this. This is what happened. This is what I want to share about it. This is how I felt. Like I'll literally just go through the whole thing and then I'll come back and put it in my actual bank later. So if there was like one thing that I would share to get started, that's it. And it's a habit that you kind of just get into eventually. You start to notice these things and you're like, I should write that down, or oh, like that would be great to share. These things just kind of start popping up and it almost becomes just like second nature because you just want to share all this goodness with your people, right? So that would be, I don't know, if you don't have a story bank, you gotta start that.
That is an excellent place to start. And I mean, we've all heard of writer's block. So writer's block, there's where it comes from. So I think that would be really helpful, especially once you start to build it up as well for those days that you're just like, I don't know how
And you know,
Okay.
to kind of piggyback on that though, like I do want to say there might be times when you even go to your story bank and you're like, I don't feel inspired by any of this. Right? That happens to me sometimes too. Like I will sit down, I'll be like, "Ugh, I don't know what to write this week. I'll look at my story bank and I'm like, none of that feels good to me. And instead of like, you know, you kind of have that moment where you have to make a decision like, okay, well, I quote unquote need to write this email. So I'm just gonna like force myself through this. And what I have found is like, shut the computer, go do something else, wash the dishes, go for a walk, take a shower, listen to a podcast, read a book, whatever. Like literally take your mind off of it. And, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but anytime that I've done that, I swear to you, idea just like it comes to me and like just this thing happens and I'm like, "Ah, that's what I'll write my email about." And it's, I don't know why, I don't know how, but give it a try.
That makes sense. I mean, otherwise you're just gonna sit there for like 2 hours staring at a blank screen going, I need to do this. I promised myself I would see weekly emails or whatever, and it's time. And I can't.
And then you'll look at 2 hours have passed and then you'll be upset because you just wasted 2 hours.
Yeah.
You still have a blank screen. So it's like, take the time, go, you know, take 15, take 30 and come back. And, you know, you might find that the email comes out better after that and you still get it done in less than 2 hours total, even though you took the break.
Yeah. And when you mentioned going for walks a few times, I highly second going for walks when you need any kind of inspirational ideas for anything. That is where I get my best thinking as well. Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the best one. Cool. All right. It is rapid fire question time.
Ooh.
So if you could turn to yourself when you first started your business journey and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Good. I would say that I would tell myself to take the pressure off, the pressure that I put on myself to get it perfect. Like perfection doesn't exist, you guys. It's a lie. It's nothing. You know, things aren't going to be quote unquote perfect. But the more that we allow this idea of perfectionism and like it has to be perfect before I do it, you're going to find that the thing doesn't get done, right? Because you're waiting. Well, you know, it's going to be perfect when this happens, or it's going to be perfect when I can do this. We always put these like conditions on like what we're going to do or what has to happen before we can take that next step, right? And then it never gets done. And then, you know, we don't grow. The business doesn't grow. We don't do the things that we really want to do. And so that would be just do it, right? Like there's this phrase that I've heard. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of us have heard, but done is better than perfect. Just get it done. Because not like the best thing is like you get to go back and change it if it doesn't feel good after a while, right? If you are teaching, like let's just relate this back to yoga, right? If you're teaching a certain style of yoga and it's like you're like young and you're like energetic and you're like, I love vinyasa, I just want to flow and I want to be sweaty and I want to work and I want to just occupy my mind with all this movement. But then let's say like in 15 years, you're like, you know, that's not good for my body right now. That's not what my body needs. But I already have all these people who know me for vinyasa and for all these like sweaty flows that they're going to get moving. Like you don't have to keep doing that just because it's what you were doing before, right? You get to change, you get to pivot, you get to decide what you're doing. And so like whatever you do now, it's probably not going to be what you're doing later anyway. So don't wait for it to be perfect, just do it. Easier said than done, I know. But that would be it. Honestly, it's something I do still struggle with. I'm not perfect. So but
No, that's good advice. My perfectionism, I always think of the time wabi sabi. It's a Japanese term, and it does actually come from pottery of all places. And it means the beauty is in the imperfections, effectively. We don't really have an English translation, but you could have like all of these different pieces of handmade pottery, and they're kind of boring if they're all exactly the same and perfectly, quote unquote. But it's like the little chip in it, or like the little tiny bit of glaze that's different. That's what that imperfection is what makes it perfect or wabi-sabi or beautiful, and it what makes every meat.
That's character. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much. There was so much to unpack in that. I'm definitely gonna be writing some notes, definitely, and having to go back and listen to this. And I'm sure everyone will. I think there's some really great practical tips that will help people to enhance and connect with their audiences a lot more. So thank you so much for sharing all of that today. And if people want to connect with you further, how can they do that? We'll include all of the links and everything below in the show notes.
So my website is Frisch Copy, so Frisch copy.com. Same name on Instagram. I'm not really active on Instagram. It's not my platform of choice, but you can find me there. I am more on LinkedIn, so you'll find me Jess Frischholtz on LinkedIn. I mean, even I'm around. I'm somewhere in that online world. So yeah, those would be the places.
Cool, and we'll put all those things down. Awesome, thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.